All right, we have one more panel before we take our first break of the day. You don't want to miss this one. We're going to be talking about layer 1, layer 2 blockchains. And we have speakers from Arca, Nick Hotz. We have Sigmund Holtz from Binance, Justin Barlow from Solana, John Nahas from Avalanche, and all being moderated by Kydo, who runs the Blockchain Research Club at Stanford. So a great group of people to come out. So let's welcome out our L1, L2 blockchain panelists. And at the conclusion of this panel, we'll be taking a 45-minute break.
They even on? There you go.
There you go. Okay, perfect. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the panelists. Before we begin, we have a very, very amazing group of people here. We're going to talk about scaling a multi-chain future. And before we begin, just a quick round of intro. I'm Kydo. I run the research team at Stanford Blockchain Club. We focus mainly on consensus and networking and applied cryptography there. John?
I'm definitely not as smart as him. Good to meet you guys. John Nahas, Vice President of Business Development at Avalanche, overseeing the Avalanche ecosystem. It's really good to be here today. I'm a two-time Trojan, so it's good to be home, so fight on.
Hey guys, I'm Justin Barlow. I'm from the Solana Labs team, specifically Solana Ventures, investing in early stage projects in the Solana ecosystem. I'm also an SC alum, so great to be back.
It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Sigmund. I'm with Binance, more specifically BNB chain on the business development end. I'm from Canada, just flew in, and I am not a USC alum.
Hi everybody, I'm Nick. I'm from Arca. Arca is a digital asset manager and innovation arm where we develop kind of financial products using blockchain solutions. I'm on the asset management side as the Vice President of Research.
Awesome, so we're gonna get the panel started, and first we're gonna paint some brief background for everyone so we're on the same page. We're talking about multi-chain. So the first question to you guys is, how do you even define multi-chain, and why do we need all these different chains?
All right, I'll get started. Look, I think if we take a step back, if you look at the current crypto ecosystem or blockchain ecosystems, we're still super early. And what I mean by that is you have maxis and you have people who think that a single chain is going to rule the entire blockchain ecosystem. That's unsustainable. That's kind of not even realistic, right? If you look at other systems that exist, whether it's a financial system or whatever, you have multiple different infrastructure layers that run this thing, right? So in the financial system, you have ACH, SWIFT, SEPA, Fedwire, etc. In the crypto world, you will have many chains. The idea that one chain, one monolithic chain, whatever you want to call it, is going to work, I don't think is reasonable. I don't think look, if you look at the numbers right now, there's what, tens of millions of people in crypto. That means there's tens of millions of people that have bought a token, right? The real people in Web3, on DeFi, NFTs, doing transactions on chain, it's probably less than 1 million. And you have congestion on chains, you have issues on chains. They can't scale, or haven't even scaled yet to do the basics. So mass adoption, forget it. So multi-chain means you're going to need app-specific chains, something Avalanche has in subnets, and you're also going to need to have a multi-chain future where different chains have different niches and work together in harmony to really bring a digital, decentralized global economy to fruition, which is kind of, I think, the goal that all of us up here in blockchain are trying to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, multi-chain, when you think about the multi-chain strategy, I would really say that it's just a matter of having assets or functions that touch multiple chains. So whether that's smart contracts executing cross-chain, whether that's assets across different chains, or even just simple transactions that are going on multiple chains. I think the multi-chain future is obviously going to be a very important part of gaining mass adoption.
I think everything comes down to utility at the end of the day. So when you look at a multi-chain ecosystem, multi-chain infrastructure, right, it's really key to see how the different players are playing in the space. So for example, one thing that this could look like is how companies or how entities, for example, in the blockchain space are able to really compete, right? They can do something better than another chain. And that's, I think, really why we get this multi-chain ecosystem and infrastructure, because one chain is really good at focusing on having a community or having really low fees. One of them is focused on something else. And filling those gaps in the ecosystem, I think, is really why we have this inception of just a multi-chain infrastructure. And I agree with what's already been said. I think we all have the same goal, really, at the end of the day, to bring blockchain to as many people as we can, to have the entire Web3 ecosystem develop as far as it already has and even further, and really just bring the freedom and spread of money to as many people as we can globally.
I really like this setup where I'm the moderator, toss out questions, and sort of like three chains pitch each other, and in the end we have the fun making a decision which one to invest. So, a lot of different chains, a lot of different value propositions. So, Nick, to you, what do you think is the, when you look at all these chains, how do you think about their unique value proposition? Is it the ethos, is it the tech, is it go-to-market strategies from the BD side? What do you look at?
Yeah, I mean, it's really all of those things and more. I mean, it definitely, the kind of all the things you mentioned, you kind of have to try to quantify as well as you can. It's certainly are looking at the ecosystem and the types of projects. We use a whole bunch of different metrics to try to do that. Things like TVL, things like active addresses, but those only go so far. I mean, those are really kind of basic metrics, and we don't really have a good way to think about valuation in the same way that you do with like a equity in the traditional stock market currently. So it's really kind of learning on our feet and doing our best to try to think about how to value these, and really how the token values, or how the tokens are integrated with the ecosystem to kind of accrue value themselves as well.
Awesome. And to the chains, what do you think is your main unique value proposition to the users or developers out there? If you have to summarize in one sentence, how would you summarize it?
For BNB chain, very simply, it's community, right? We have the largest community right now in blockchain. There's over 1 million daily active users. We have over 2 million weekly active gamers on chain. Because of that community, as well as just the infrastructure that's being built on BNB chain, I think there's a significant amount of utility back in that. And just going back to the earlier question, how do you really summarize value proposition? I think it's extremely simple. And although we don't have the same metrics to value it as we do in TradFi, I think it's very simple. Do you have users? And do you have projects? And do you have people building in a bear market on your chain? And that's a very, very easy way to basically test that, because at the end of the day, the chains that ultimately have users, have TVL, have DAU, are going to succeed in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, while I'm not speaking on sort of Solana or on behalf of Solana as a network, as an investor at Solana Ventures, obviously we have a lot of expertise in sort of the Solana network and sort of the Solana ecosystem. I think the most interesting thing, in my opinion, that sort of separates us is just being able to have a single global state machine that's able to scale to tens of thousands or millions of transactions potentially without sharding, and while being able to process transactions in parallel.
I'd say on the Avalanche side, there's a couple key differentiators. Avalanche, as it's known, is thought of as an L1. In reality, it's almost like an L0. So we have a main chain that does what most people are used to doing on an everyday basis. We have the ability to scale infinitely with subnets, which are app-specific chains, or as MasterCard calls them, business-specific chains. So certain entities can launch their own chains with subnets to scale infinitely. And most importantly, and thanks to the Avalanche consensus, which is a novel new consensus that we create, that the team created and runs the engine behind Avalanche, is we are the fastest chain in terms of time to finality, meaning when a transaction hits the chain, it's finalized in less than a second. We are the fastest there. And when you're trying to build a machine to do finance and value transfer globally, nobody's going to wait seconds, minutes, hours for transactions to finalize. So whether it's speed, decentralization, scalability, I think across the board we have a lot to bring to the
a lot of different
system.
very, very unique value here across every chain. So I think you probably have heard it before. Or you may have not, then I would really recommend you guys to take a look at each of their website and go on, dig on their white paper, understand more about the technical details as well. My next question is on the side of, we recently go through a little bit of turbulence, really showcases, how the importance of transparency and security. So what is, from your perspective, what is the next innovation for your blockchain, or what you're looking for in the base layer protocol level with respect to security, transparency, or privacy?
I would say on the Avalanche side, we've continually been innovating since the initial launch of mainnet. From the original days of the white paper, we talked about subnets and all the vision that we had come up with almost 3 years ago, and we've been delivering on that since. So it's not like we innovate on the fly. These are things that have been thought of and built at the base layer. We're truly, the decentralization continues to grow on Avalanche. We have one of the highest Nakamoto coefficients. So decentralization truly matters, right? Nobody cares about it until it's needed. As we've seen over the past couple of weeks, things go crazy when things are super centralized. That's kind of the promise of blockchain. But most recently, we announced a network upgrade called BAMF, which allows for elastic subnets. What that means is anyone can deploy their own subnet if they're a validator on Avalanche, not just permissioned or enterprises, but any one of you could deploy your own subnet. Any one of us that's a validator can validate your subnet. You can have your own token. So it allows for really the tools for the developers, whoever they may be, from a two-person dev team to a global enterprise, to deploy the kind of blockchain infrastructure that they want, that allows them to build the applications and use cases they need.
Subnets. Awesome.
Subnets.
What about you, Sigmund?
So I think the first thing is that before you discuss how we're actually going to be doing like the idea of transparency, but also innovation for the chain, which I'll touch on very quickly, it's why it's so important. And I think that right now, more than ever, it is a building phase in blockchain. So our goal is to really look at where is the future of blockchain going, right? What is next? What do we need more of? And as we scale and as we reach towards a point of mass adoption, a key is going to be, number one, users, but it's also going to be transactions per second. So that's why right now we not only have development of sidechains, but we're also looking at the ZK rollup, which is going to be very soon here rolling out, and that's going to be really focused on how can we get transactions per second to 5,000 to 10,000, and I think that that's going to be a pretty key milestone, at least in terms of BNB chain, for being able to look again towards the greater picture. What is mass adoption? What is the next step? And what does the community want? What do the people want? What does the entire ecosystem need? And then filling those gaps appropriately. And I think that that's going to continue going forward.
All these amazing research development is going to be, at the end of the day, funded by the labs or the token itself. So Nick, you mentioned a little bit, like it's pretty expensive to operate and upgrade these protocols. What are different, value accrue models you're seeing on the L1? You found it interesting, or people, maybe it's interesting, but people are not testing out yet. Like, what are these different value accrual mechanisms you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, at first I would just back up and say there's kind of 3 different scaling architectures that you see broadly across the ecosystem. There's this monolithic architecture where pretty much there's one chain that completes all the functions together. There's the horizontal architecture, which I would say something like Avalanche falls somewhat into, where you have many different chains across within the ecosystem, with Avalanche's subnets, for example. And then there's a modular architecture, which is kind of like BNB chain, where you break out the various functions. So Sigmund was talking about rollups. Those are something that would execute above the kind of base layer chain that is providing the security. So I think that there's a couple different ways those different architectures accrue value. I think the biggest one going forward is going to be MEV, maximum extractable value, which is the kind of the arbitrage opportunities that are available within the chain or across different chains, where the base layer or the token holders in some way can accrue a fee from that by essentially creating an auction that the arbitrageurs will have to compete in order to get into a specific block on the chain. That's the biggest source of revenue. The other one being security, which is the traditional kind of way that Ethereum, for example, accrues value.
Awesome. I know AVAX went through, the fee model upgrade and different things. What were like some lessons learned when experimenting with the fee models and value accrual to the base layer token?
So, I think we differentiate ourselves from the onset a lot of people came out. There's a lot of other chains that started with this super cheap model, right? We're going to be really cheap. We're going to have fees really low. With that has problems, right? You have problems of spam. You have problems of uptime. You have everything else. We did the opposite way, right? So we started with a higher fee model in a more conservative fashion, right? And we moved we optimized down. So we moved the fee structures down. The more we noticed that the network can handle the load, the more that the network could absorb as many transactions that are needed without compromising security and uptime, right? So with that, of course, fees that are so there's this thing in crypto, right? People always look at different metrics like fees burned or value accrual. Like, that's not always the best metric, because if your fees are really high, like Ethereum, you're going to burn the most amount of fees, but it's also going to be so expensive no one can use it. So it kind of, these things need to balance themselves out. On the Avalanche side, as I said, we started from a conservative place because we focused on security and liveliness first and foremost. We moved it down, we continually tweak it down and upgrade the network to be cheaper to use or less expensive to use. I don't like to say the word cheaper. Cheap doesn't work all the time. So when it's inexpensive, it works. But we've also seen an offloading of transactions from the main chain, particularly the C chain, which is the EVM, onto subnets. So if you think about it, main chains can be kind of the playgrounds where new applications, new developers build and deploy. And once they reach a level of scale, they could deploy on their own subnet, which is their own chain, and the ecosystem will grow to be kind of a network of networks.
I think that fits really well into the next question. It's very hard to not talk about multi-chain without mentioning dApp chains, right? Individual app chains. So we've seen this conversation picking up in the last 2 years from DYDX removing their L2 design to a Cosmos SDK app chain design. So what do you think about this dApp chain thesis in the future, and what do you think is going to play out? Maybe we can start with Nick and then move this way.
Yeah, I think going forward 5 years or something, we will see a whole lot more app chains than we do today. I think it's just kind of economically logical for big applications to want the flexibility and kind of the value capture that you can achieve with an app chain. I think of something like Uniswap today. It gets a lot of composability from being able to interact on Ethereum, that users don't have to send their assets to a separate blockchain. But say some of that gets dealt with over the coming years, and bridges get better, composability gets better. Uniswap would have a lot of benefits from having its own app chain. You could capture MEV, as I was kind of alluding to before. You can customize the features a lot more so than you can. You wouldn't even have to use EVM potentially. So there's a whole bunch more you can do in terms of using an app chain when you are a big application that commands a user base. So yeah, I think just going forward, so many more.
I definitely think that there's a place for it, and it's something that is on the horizon. But overall, I still think we're a decent way away from seeing that as of now. I think what you're going to see kind of in terms of innovation and just in general, kind of the next steps and evolution of blockchain is going to be current chains improving the infrastructure that they have, basically furthering the innovation that they do have, whether that be with, if they're going to be developing side chains or kind of just building out from that. And then also working on things like, for example, reducing fees, getting more users in, creating that value proposition, having more innovative projects construct on their chain and their ecosystem, I think is definitely what we're going to see. There definitely is a place for app chains, and I definitely think we're going to see it. But as you said, there's a lot that they're going to have in the future, and there's a lot of value I think they can hold, but I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, I mean, to follow on with what Nick said, I think in general in the Solana ecosystem, we're for the most part not building too much in the way of app chains. I don't think we've seen any sort of prolific examples of app chains in the Solana ecosystem to date. But with that said, I think there's really two main things going on there. One of them is, so far, with the high throughput and the low fees and high transaction speed of Solana, we haven't had a need thus far for app chains. And the second is that we do have a number of teams that are now working on layer 2 solutions on top of Solana, namely guys like Eclipse or Layer N, who are building optimistic rollups that will allow Solana to have essentially what will be side chains that settle back to Solana, allowing for way higher throughput than we currently see. Anything from 100,000 plus TPS and lower settlement times. So in general, I think the idea of an app chain certainly makes sense, and it really does depend on the model that your L1 goes with. I think in Solana in particular, we're looking to really be able to be in a place where we don't have to fractionalize liquidity, and that we can kind of have one single global state.
I would say on the Avalanche side, so I mean, we're talking about these app chains, right? That is exactly our thesis with subnets, which we proposed like 3 years ago, like I said in the white paper, and now have brought to fruition, and we're continually expanding on that. I think it's the future, and I think it's the way we all need to work, because simply put, single chains, as I said, I don't think can do it all, right? Because if you're gonna bridge the current economy with the digital economy, you need everything to happen in one place. But the problem with that is, if you're a bank or regulated financial institution, you are not going to put your transactions alongside a monkey JPEG or alongside a DeFi transaction, which might or might not be occurring with someone in a sanctioned locality. So the benefit of app chains, or the specific part of subnets that we're proud of, is that if you are a financial institution or an enterprise, you could geofence your subnet. You can have a US domiciled based subnet. You can have a subnet that requires KYC, AML, or accreditation if you're an investor. You could have a subnet that is GDPR compliant for users if you're in the EU. These are things, as more mass adoption happens, we need to solve for existing laws and regulations that exist in different jurisdictions. So being able to tailor your chain to fit the application, not change the application to fit the chain, makes a big difference. And we're seeing this particularly in gaming, right? The team over at Axie had a great project, great plan. They launched their chain. They had some problems because they're not blockchain developers. They're game developers. Blockchain people, crypto people love to talk about crypto. And they love to talk to crypto with other crypto people. Most of what's built in crypto is for people in crypto. If we're going to expand this industry, grow this technology, we need to reach out to everybody. And to do so, we need to allow people to build what they want based on their parameters. And with gaming shops, right? Like they're building games on Avalanche on their own dedicated subnets. Their focus should be building a game. The blockchain stuff, leave it to the blockchain people, right? Leave it to the decentralized ledger technology experts and the consensus experts and all the things. The best analogy I like to say is when you turn on Netflix every day, it doesn't say Netflix powered by AWS. AWS provides you with the technology layer, you build what you want on top. That's kind of where we're looking with subnets, both for things that need scale, but also for things that need their specific building environment.
I see. And the next question is going to be always on top of my mind is, ETH ecosystem versus all the other L1s. Now we're talking about different app chains. When you propose to outside developers, how do you convince them to build on your chain instead of an L2 where the most network effect already is? John, you can.
Sure. I mean, the argument for us is simple, right? Ethereum, the EVM, at least the Ethereum virtual machine, right, is a solid foundation. The C chain on Avalanche is EVM compatible. So we chose that to be our smart contracts platform, as opposed to the Solana has a Rust smart contracts platform. That's great. But we saw that as the default. That's where most of the developers are. And ultimately, you want to build on something that can scale both at the L1 level, which Avalanche does, but also can grow. So for us, it's not only, though, focused on the EVM. We just announced yesterday a Rust SDK. So if you're a developer and you're building in Rust, you have another option to build on Avalanche by building on a new Rust-based subnet. If you are someone from Aptos or Sui, and you're working in a Move VM environment, you can work on a Move VM on an Avalanche subnet. Avalanche subnets can be VM agnostic. You can pick whichever one you want. But ultimately, it comes down to the things that matter. A welcoming ecosystem, support from the foundation, whether as a grant, as an investment, as co-marketing, dev support. We like to build with our teams. We like to work with them. Anyone who's built on Avalanche knows how involved we are with the teams. We consider the ecosystem to be first and foremost. So we lead with that, and the tech speaks for itself.
God, the tech speaks for itself. What about BNB?
So The way I would answer this question is I would want to put myself in the shoes of a developer. You have a project, whether that be in DeFi, whether that be NFTs, gaming, whatever it may be. What are you looking for out of a chain? Because the easiest way to answer the question to how is a chain going to provide value, how are they actually going to partner with that project, that company, and really integrate them with the ecosystem, is to simply look at what does the project need? What does the company need? And at BNB Chain, I think it's very, very critical. Number one, it's obviously support to that project, whatever that may look like. That could be in the form of a grant or connections to any of the other people or teams that we have with, for example, Binance, which sits in the BNB ecosystem. But it's also the fact that you want a chain that's going to fight for you, right? You want a chain that's going to further the ecosystem at the same time. Because at the end of the day, the chain that you build on really dictates, I like to see it, as the potential of growth that you have, right? If you have a chain that has a lot of users, for example, like BNB Chain, we have 1 million daily active users right now on chain. Our high last year in November was over 2 million. We already have that ecosystem. There's already people that are ready to use the applications that are built on top of it. So it's a lot easier for people to integrate their projects and to be able to access those users, especially in a market where it's extremely difficult to get TVL and DAU just in general because of where the market is at this current point. So I think that really, to summarize, the critical factor is what is the chain going to do for you? For example, like how BNB is going to fight for you, and how at the end of the day, we already have that ecosystem developed, and we're listening to the people with that transparency, for example, for how we're going to continue to develop. So what are we going to continue to innovate? How are we going to continue to grow as an L1? And what are we going to do to provide value to everyone that decides to come and build on the BNB ecosystem and further it for users, projects, and BNB alike?
Yeah, I would say on my end, a lot of the teams that I talk to that are building in the Solana ecosystem come for really one of a few reasons. One of them is scalability, the other one is speed, and the other one is low transaction fees. I think it's pretty obvious to most of the people here today, as well as my peers on stage with me, that if we're going to reach hundreds of millions, potentially billions of users, it can't cost $500 or $1,000 to do a transaction, and it can't take 15 to 30 minutes, right? It needs to be happening at in real time for a fee that is payable by anyone in the world, right, and not just people who have substantial amounts of money. And so I think those are some of the main things that people focus on when they're looking at Solana as a chain. Obviously, things like the ecosystem and the community support, as well as support from foundations and things like that, are very important. But I would say those three sort of main things, as well as Solana being built sort of natively in Rust and allowing people to use a language that they may already be familiar with without having existing blockchain experience, is a really big pull for the ecosystem. Solidity has a lot of great things about it, but one problem with it is that it is something that is native to the crypto ecosystem, right? And so it's very rare to find someone who spent a significant amount of time building on Solidity. And so having this ability to build in Rust actually does kind of bridge the barrier from people who are coming from Web 2 or coming from other existing businesses and looking to then get involved in the blockchain community.
Awesome. I want to, go back to Nick, where, I think Arca published some data before about number of developers in different ecosystems. Can you just share with us some of those data you're seeing, like on the developer side across different ecosystem? Is there any relationship or which ecosystem is picking up, et cetera?
I mean, really, the dominant trend is developers just kind of down right now. It really has been pretty equal across all the ecosystems. I don't know if I'm looking at a certain data. I don't know if you guys are seeing the same things, but yeah, I mean, I think what we really need to see is some new innovations coming out of this bear market. That's what's really going to drive users at the end of the day. I mean, teams like the ones with me today have done such a good job at building out scaling, I think, over the last 2 to 3 years, that we have actually, for the first time, have a lot of block space, places for applications to go and for users to pay cheap fees and use the chains. We just really need to build applications that can drive in users and create real world value for people. And I think that's what drives the next bull market in this space.
Awesome. We have a little bit of time left, so I'm gonna give it to the panelists. We have a large audience here, students, founders, builders. We also have a large audience online. What do you want to say to them? I mean, everyone is gonna have 15 seconds. So to the point, what do you want them to know about what's going on? Anyone can start first.
I think now is the time to build. A lot of people, I just want to say generally, they exit the market when they see prices move down because they're fearful, they want to do something else. Now is the time when, myself at BNB Chain, as someone in business development, is seeing more projects than ever really build innovative things on chain and are looking for that support. So all I would say is if you're a founder, if you're someone that has a project, if you're an investor, don't shy away from the market, because this is the time when people build that find success in the next bull run. Don't be mistaken as a lot of people are, that simply leave at this time. And I'll also just put out there, and I assume I would echo most of the people on this panel, if you are a builder, if you are a developer, I'd love to chat with you after as well, and I'm sure everyone on the panel would, in terms of what you're currently doing in this space and how we can be of assistance to you.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there in terms of the opportunity set available right now being, either as strong or even stronger than it was, when prices were higher. I think generally prices are sort of a lead and lag indicator. They're not really a good way to assess the strength of different ecosystems or crypto as a whole. And so there is a ton of opportunity right now. The other thing I will say, and this was a question that I always had when I went to things like this when I was in my time at USC was, if you're thinking about how you can get involved in the industry, the simplest thing is really just to dive in with 2 feet, whether that's if you're a developer and contributing to open source code, if you're on the research or economic side, writing research papers and really looking deeply into some of these protocols and getting your name out there, or whether you're on sort of the business development side and you would like to, sign up for internships or try to get involved in these ecosystems. The easiest way is really just to get experience, and that first experience you get will be one of the things that I think will carry you for the rest of your career. So if you're thinking about, when do I get in? Do I need to do something like investment banking first before even looking into crypto? I would say don't wait and really just get involved as soon as you can.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo the sentiment from everybody, right? Any one of us would be more than happy to support you guys with financial help or developer resources. But I would just say to this community in particular and to the SC people, right? Like, this school is known and you guys are known for being innovative and entrepreneurial. So you guys think outside the box, you build cool stuff. If you're interested in this space, to their points, right? Reach out to any of us. Would love to talk to you guys about joining. If you want to learn, play around yourself. If you want to build, and I hope you're building, build things that matter, right? Like, don't just try and redo whatever exists currently. Like I said, crypto people build things for crypto people. Think of different ways that crypto could be used or blockchain can be used to make people's lives easier, better, things faster and cheaper, right? Like, think outside the box. Think of blockchain as a technology that helps provide a solution and is not the core thing, right? So whether it's an application, a payments thing, I don't know, right? When people say, like, what's that mass adoption thing for crypto? I say it hasn't happened yet, right? Like what social media did for the internet, like, we haven't had that moment yet. There hasn't been something new that's been transformative to take blockchain to that next level. Everything that exists currently is everything that's already been built under the sun. So build something cool.
Nick?
Yeah, I would just say, zooming out kind of from the market cycle standpoint, like, this period feels so oddly to me like late 2018. It was towards the end of the last bear market. And that's the time that DeFi got built. There was so much innovation going on at that time that really laid the groundwork for everything that we really have in blockchain today. So my plea to the audience is just stay engaged in the space. If you're a builder, go build, and if you're an investor, go invest. But nothing's going away, and this is a good time to be in the space.
I'll use my last 15 seconds to say, take a look at IBC. Take a look at ICS 23. Those are also very interesting ways to do cross-chain communication and scale your different blockchains. And that's it. That's a wrap for the panel. Thank you guys so much, and thank you guys so much for your time. We really, really appreciate it.